I rise on a point of privilege, if I may. At the last regular meeting of City Council, under the item response to written answers to inquiries, I was ruled out of order during the comments, the response I had to the written inquiry. And I cited Section 12, subsection 1.13, that during response to written answers to inquiry, members of City Council may speak to any matter arising as a result of information provided. The Mayor then pointed out that this says pursuant to Section 31 of this bylaw. Section 31 goes on to state that in any matter of procedure not provided for in this bylaw, the proceedings of City Council shall be guided by the rules of the Legislative Assembly of Saskatchewan. I would first point out that this bylaw does have rules about response to written answers to inquiries, and it states that members of City Council may speak to any matter arising as a result of information provided. I went and checked with what the rules in the legislature are on this, because that's what I was told I was out of order because I wasn't following those rules, even though we do have our own rules. And the legislature does not allow for any response to written inquiries. So if we were to follow the logic that ruled me out of order, we would have this agenda item, response to written answers to inquiries, that no one is allowed to speak to. I followed that up with a phone call today to the legislature, to the Speaker's office, and was told that no, in the legislature there is no response to written answers to inquiries. But here in the City of Moose Jaw, we do have an agenda item called response to written answers to written inquiries that states members of City Council may speak to any matter arising as a result of information provided by City Administration. I have the relevant rules from the provincial legislature, and I rise on a point of privilege stating that I was not out of order. I was completely in order. The rule calling me out of order does not apply, and I wish to make that clear.
Councillor Swanson has raised the question of privilege, and I believe he is correct in reporting to Council that the rule of the Assembly is that there is no debate, no comment. In fact, regarding the receiving of written questions in response to written questions to the Legislative Assembly, it was on that ground, in my interpretation, as I look at the rules here that govern the rules of the conduct of councillors in council, that as it says, that response to written answers to inquiries during which members of City Council may speak to any matter arising as a result of information provided by City Administration pursuant to Section 31 of the bylaw. And then, as Councillor Swanson has correctly referenced, that says as governed by the Legislative Assembly. It was the interpretation of the Chair, and continues to be the interpretation of the Chair, that the rules here provide for response, but not for debate. And so it was that differentiation between being able to respond, to give context to the information received in response to that inquiry, to give it context, but not to enter into a debate on the understanding and my view that when entering into debate, then all members ought to be given the opportunity to participate, and debate by its nature should lead to conclusion, and in that context therefore debate is not appropriate to enter into, and it's the judgment of the Chair as to when one moves from comment to give context to debate. So I hear the question of privilege raised by Councillor, and I still stand by the ruling having made at the last Council meeting. Councillor Swanson?
Well, your ruling the previous week was that there's no debate because that's what the rule of the legislature is. And I remind you, you're not in Kansas anymore. This rule says you can speak to any matter. You interpret it as debate, but that response to a written inquiry had a subjective statement in it. There can be no arguing with the success of this program. I feel it's an ongoing, and the poor writer of that response was given the task. That's the third or fourth time there's been a similar report written by somebody different every time. There was a subjective statement in it that I also believed ignored several key factors, one of which I was ruled out of order before making, is that the people of Moose Jaw left $6 million on the table with respect to the sale of those lots. There is nothing preventing any other member of council rising, following my statements, and responding to that written inquiry as well. I was not engaged in debate. I was responding to that inquiry, A, on a subjective statement made in it, which I felt had no place in it, and B, I felt it ignored significant information with respect to an analysis of the housing programs in this city. And I had never before heard someone ruled out of order in response to written inquiry, and that's after I was adding it up, some 350 or 360 council meetings. And the points I were making, I think I was ruled out of order because of the points I was making, not because of anything I had done improper. And in researching the matter, I believe it was incorrectly stated that we have to follow legislature rules because we already have our own rules. And I would hope in future that people who wish to, members of elected officials who wish to respond to written answers to inquiries are given the freedom to do so. And that is the freedom afforded all members of council. And particularly when there is a statement that is not objective. I have the right to stand up and question that. And I also felt there was information not contained in the report that was relevant. And I mentioned that briefly in the meeting we had before, and I thought that was a very vital piece of information. So we have rules here. They may be different than the rules in the legislature, but these are the rules we follow.
Once again, I've heard the Councillor Swanson's remarks, and I have ruled consistent in the way that I believe the rule was intended as it's worded here, and based on practice of legislative assembly. And I will find that the member's point of privilege is not well taken.